The grand ballroom fell into a deadly silence, as the little boy's voice cracked through the air. "He's not invited." Victoria's sharp words sliced through the music like a knife. Her perfectly painted lips curled in disgust, as she stared down at the tiny figure standing in front of her in wrinkled clothes. But then, something no one expected happened. 3-year-old Liam, with tears streaming down his chubby cheeks, reached into his mother's old coat pocket with his tiny trembling hands. He pulled out a phone, pressed play, and a man's deep, emotional voice filled the entire ballroom. The voice note began, and in that moment, everything changed. "Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight's story is one of those rare ones that will stay with you long after it ends. It's about wealth, pride, a cold heart, and one little boy who carried a secret that would shake an entire mansion to its core. If you love emotional stories that actually move you, make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell, because trust me, you do not want to miss what happens in the next few minutes. Now let's begin. The Reed estate sat like a palace on the hills of Connecticut. Towering ceilings, crystal chandeliers worth more than most people's homes, and marble floors so polished you could see your reflection. On this particular October evening, the mansion was alive with celebration. It was the engagement party of 36-year-old billionaire Marcus Reed, self-made tech tycoon, handsome, powerful, and known for never showing weakness. Standing beside him was Victoria Lang, 31, stunning in a custom red designer gown, diamonds sparkling around her neck like ice. She smiled beautifully for the cameras, touched Marcus's arm at the perfect moments, and played the role of future wife flawlessly. But behind that perfect smile was a woman who believed certain people belonged, and others simply didn't. Far away from the glittering guests, in the quiet staff quarters at the back of the estate, was Emma, a 29-year-old single mother, working as a maid for the Reed family for the past 2 years. She was gentle, hardworking, and always invisible, exactly how the rich liked their staff. Tonight, she had no choice but to bring her son Liam. The babysitter had flaked at the last minute. Emma couldn't afford to lose this job. Rent was due. Her own mother was battling cancer back in Ohio, and medical bills were stacking up like mountains. So she had begged Liam to stay quiet and hidden in the staff room. "Just for a few hours, baby. Please stay with Mama's bag," she had whispered, kissing his forehead. But 3-year-olds don't understand parties or rules. While Emma was busy serving drinks in the main hall, Liam woke up scared. He clutched his worn-out teddy bear and wandered out, searching for his mother. His small bare feet padded silently across the cold marble, until he found himself standing at the edge of the grand ballroom. Hundreds of wealthy guests turned their heads, and that's when Victoria saw him. Her expression changed instantly. The fake smile vanished. She stepped forward, her expensive heels clicking loudly. "What is this?" she hissed, looking at the small boy in cheap clothes, standing among million-dollar gowns. "Who let this child in here?" Emma came running from across the room, horror written on her face. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Please. He's my son. Victoria didn't even let her finish. She raised her hand and spoke loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "He's not invited." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Liam's big blue eyes filled with tears. He didn't understand why this beautiful lady in the red dress was looking at him like he was dirt. His little lips trembled as he clutched his teddy bear tighter. "Mama," he whispered, his voice breaking. But Victoria wasn't done. "Get him out of here right now," she snapped. "This is a private celebration, not a daycare for staff's children." Emma dropped to her knees, pulling Liam close, tears already forming in her own eyes. The humiliation burned deep. The entire room watched in uncomfortable silence. Marcus Reed, who had been across the ballroom talking to business partners, finally turned his head toward the commotion. And that's when little Liam, crying softly in his mother's arms, did something that no one, not even Emma, saw coming. With shaking hands, He reached into the pocket of the oversized coat his mother had wrapped him in, and pulled out an old cracked phone. He pressed play. A man's warm, emotional voice suddenly echoed through the speakers, clear and strong, filling the silent ballroom. "Emma, if you're listening to this, I want you to know I'm sorry. I was a coward, but our son, he deserves the world. Tell him his father loved him, and tell him," the voice note continued, and every single person in that room froze. The voice note stopped playing for a moment, but the silence in the ballroom was heavier than any words could ever be. No one moved. Not the waiters holding silver trays of champagne, not the wealthy guests in their designer suits and gowns, and certainly not Marcus Reed, who now stood completely still, staring at the small boy and his mother. But before we go deeper into what that voice note actually said, let's go back a little. Just a few hours earlier, the Reed estate had looked like something out of a dream. Hundreds of string lights twinkled like stars across the perfectly manicured gardens. Inside the main ballroom, a live orchestra played soft classical music that mixed beautifully with laughter and clinking glasses. This wasn't just an engagement party. It was a statement, a celebration of power, success, and a future that looked picture-perfect. Marcus Reed stood near the grand staircase like a king in his own castle. At 36 years old, he had built a tech empire from nothing. From a small apartment in Boston to a billion-dollar company, his journey was legendary in business circles. Tall, sharp-featured, with intense dark eyes, and an aura that commanded respect, Marcus had everything most men could only dream of. And tonight, he was supposed to be the happiest man in the room. Beside him was Victoria Lang, stunning, elegant, and ambitious. With her long blonde hair perfectly styled, and her red gown hugging her figure, she looked every bit the future Mrs. Reed. She smiled graciously at the guests, laughed at the right jokes, and kept her hand gently resting on Marcus's arm. To everyone watching, they were the ultimate power couple. But those who knew them closely understood the truth. Victoria came from old money. She loved the spotlight, the luxury, and most importantly, the status. She had spent months planning this engagement party, making sure every detail screamed wealth and perfection. To her, image was everything. As the night grew louder, and the champagne flowed freely, Marcus found himself smiling politely, shaking hands, and accepting congratulations. Yet something felt off. A strange emptiness he couldn't quite explain. He told himself it was just stress from the upcoming merger, that everything would feel right once he and Victoria were married. He had no idea how wrong he was. Meanwhile, hidden away in the staff area, Emma had been working non-stop since morning. Her feet ached, her back hurt, but she kept pushing through with a quiet strength that only single mothers truly understand. Emma was only 29, but life had aged her beyond her years. After Liam's father left them when Liam was just 6 months old, she had raised her son completely alone. No family nearby, no financial support, just endless shifts, sleepless nights, and a love for her son that kept her going, even when she felt like breaking. Bringing Liam to work tonight was her last resort. "I'll be a good boy, Mommy," Liam had promised earlier, his big blue eyes full of innocence. He was holding his worn-out teddy bear, the only gift he had ever received from his father. Emma had kissed his forehead and whispered, "I know you will, baby. Just stay in here and don't come out, okay? Mommy needs this job." But children that small don't understand million-dollar parties or social rules. While Emma was busy in the main hall, little Liam had woken up scared and alone. He wandered through the back corridors, teddy bear dragging behind him, until the beautiful music and bright lights pulled him into the ballroom. And that's exactly when Victoria saw him. The moment she noticed the small child standing there, in cheap clothes and bare feet, her entire expression changed. The perfect smile disappeared. Her eyes turned cold. She stepped forward, voice low but sharp enough to cut. "What on earth is this?" she muttered. Emma came rushing in seconds later, her face pale with terror. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry," Emma began, reaching for her son. But Victoria raised her hand and spoke loud enough for half the room to hear. "He's not invited." The words landed like a slap. Guests whispered. Some looked away uncomfortably. Others watched with morbid curiosity. Victoria continued, her voice dripping with disdain. "This is not a charity event. Get this child and his mother out of my sight right now." Little Liam's face crumpled. He didn't understand why the pretty lady was yelling. All he wanted was his mommy. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he clutched his teddy bear tighter. Emma dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around her son, trying desperately to shield him from the humiliation. Marcus, who had finally noticed the disturbance, began walking toward them. But before he could reach them, little Liam, sobbing quietly, did something that would change the entire night. He pulled out the old cracked phone his mother kept in her coat pocket, the phone she thought was dead. With his tiny fingers, he pressed play, and a man's deep, broken voice filled the luxurious ballroom. "Emma, if you're ever listening to this, I want you to know I never stopped loving you. I was weak, I was scared, but our son Liam, he's the best thing I ever did. Tell him his daddy was a fool for leaving. And tell him, I left something behind that might help both of you one day." The voice note continued playing. Victoria's face went pale. Marcus stopped dead in his tracks, and every guest in the room leaned in, completely stunned. What was on the rest of that voice note? And why did it make the billionaire look like he had just seen a ghost? The entire ballroom was hanging on every word coming from that old cracked phone. No one dared speak. The orchestra had gone completely silent. Even the waiters had stopped moving. But before we hear the rest of that heartbreaking voice note, we need to understand who Emma really was, and why this moment was about to break her completely. Emma Thompson was the kind of person who carried the weight of the world on her shoulders but never complained. At just 29 years old, she had already lived through more pain than most people do in a lifetime. She grew up in a small town in Ohio. Her father passed away when she was 16. Her mother had been fighting cancer for the last 2 years, and all the medical bills fell on Emma's thin shoulders. Then came the hardest chapter of her life, meeting Liam's father. He was charming at first, promised her the world, but the moment she got pregnant, he changed. He became distant, angry, and eventually disappeared when Liam was only 6 months old. No calls, no money, no goodbye, just a broken heart, and a baby who deserved so much more. Since that day, Emma had been fighting alone. She worked 2 jobs for a while, then got the opportunity to work at the Reed estate. The pay was better than anything she had ever earned. But the hours were long, and the rules were strict. Staff were expected to be invisible. No personal problems. No excuses. Tonight was the first time she had ever broken that rule. The babysitter had cancelled at the last minute. Emma couldn't afford to miss work. Rent was already 3 days late, and her mother's next chemotherapy session was coming up. So she made the difficult decision to bring Liam with her. Before the party started, she had held her son close in the small staff break room and whispered, "Be a good boy for mommy, okay? Just stay hidden. If you're really quiet, we can get ice cream tomorrow." Liam had nodded seriously, his big blue eyes full of trust. "I promise, mommy." But fear doesn't care about promises. When Liam woke up scared and alone, he did what any 3-year-old would do. He went looking for his mother. Now here he was, standing in the middle of a billionaire's engagement party, being publicly humiliated by a woman in a red dress worth more than Emma made in 6 months. Emma held her son tightly, tears streaming down her face. She didn't care about losing her job anymore. All she cared about was protecting Liam from the cruel words still echoing in her ears. "He's not invited." Those 3 words cut deeper than any knife, because to Emma, Liam wasn't just her son. He was her entire world. Her reason for waking up every single day. The only light in her exhausting, painful life. She had sacrificed everything for him. Skipped meals so he could eat. Worked through fevers. Cried silently in the bathroom, after putting him to sleep so he wouldn't see her break down. And now, in front of all these rich, powerful people, her greatest fear had come true. Her son was being treated like he didn't belong. Marcus Reed finally reached them. His tall frame cast a shadow over Emma and Liam. For a moment, he just stood there, looking at the small boy crying in his mother's arms. Victoria turned to him, expecting support. "Marcus, darling," she said sweetly, but firmly. "Can you please tell the staff to handle this? This is our night." But Marcus didn't answer her. His eyes were locked on little Liam, and the phone still playing in the boy's tiny hands. The voice note continued. The man's voice cracking with emotion. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, Emma. I was scared of responsibility, but I left something for you both. It's in a safety deposit box. The key is hidden in Liam's teddy bear. If you're listening to this, I hope it can change your lives. I love you both. I always will." The voice note ended. A heavy, suffocating silence filled the ballroom. Emma's face went completely pale. She had no idea that voice note even existed. She thought the phone was dead. It was an old phone her ex had left behind, years ago. Victoria laughed nervously, trying to regain control of the situation. "Oh please," she said, rolling her eyes. "This is clearly staged. Some pathetic attempt for attention and money. Marcus, you can't possibly believe." But Marcus wasn't listening to her. He slowly crouched down in his expensive tailored suit, bringing himself to Liam's eye level. His voice, usually commanding and confident, was now surprisingly gentle. "Hey buddy," he said softly. "What's your name?" Liam sniffled, hiding his face in his mother's neck. Emma answered for him, her voice shaking. "His name is Liam." Marcus looked at the little boy for a long moment. Something in his eyes shifted, a crack in the armor he had worn for years. Then he looked up at Emma. And in that moment, the billionaire realized this wasn't just another staff member and her child. This was a mother who had been quietly breaking for years, while he threw million-dollar parties without a second thought. What Marcus did next shocked everyone in the room. Marcus was still crouched down in front of little Liam when Victoria's sharp voice cut through the tension like a whip. "Marcus," she hissed, her perfect smile now gone. "What are you doing? Get up. This is embarrassing." But Marcus didn't move. He stayed right there at the little boy's level, looking at Liam with an expression no one had ever seen on his face before. Soft, almost pained. Emma was trembling. She held her son tighter, waiting for the moment when security would drag them both out of the mansion. She had already accepted that she would lose her job tonight. All she wanted now was to take Liam home and hold him until his tears stopped. Victoria stepped closer, her red gown sweeping across the marble floor. Her voice was low, but filled with venom. "This is ridiculous. We are celebrating our engagement, and some maid brings her dirty little child into our party. It's completely inappropriate." A few guests whispered in agreement. Others looked deeply uncomfortable. Emma finally found her voice, weak and broken. "I'm so sorry, Miss Victoria. Mr. Reed, the babysitter canceled. I had no one to leave him with. I'll leave right now. Please don't." Victoria didn't let her finish. "Oh, please spare us the sob story," she snapped. "Everyone has problems. That doesn't mean you bring them to an exclusive event. He's not invited. How many times do I have to say it?" Little Liam started crying harder. His small body shook as he buried his face deeper into his mother's shoulder. "Mama, I want to go home," he whimpered. The sound of the terrified child broke something in the room. Several female guests looked away, clearly affected. Even some of Marcus's business partners shifted awkwardly. But Victoria was not backing down. She turned to Marcus, expecting him to finally support her. "Darling, tell them. This is our night. We can't have staff children running around like this." It ruins the entire atmosphere. Marcus slowly stood up. He was tall, over 6 feet. And when he rose to his full height, the power in his presence was undeniable. Everyone waited for his decision. For a few long seconds, he said nothing. Then he looked at Victoria with an unreadable expression. "Is this really how you want our engagement night to be remembered?" he asked quietly. Victoria's eyes widened slightly, but she recovered quickly. "I'm simply protecting what we built," she replied, touching his arm. "We have important people here, investors, partners. This is not the place for, well, this." She gestured toward Emma and Liam like they were a mess that needed cleaning up. Emma felt humiliated beyond words. She whispered to her son, "It's okay, baby. We're leaving," and tried to stand up while still holding Liam. But Liam, still crying, suddenly held up his teddy bear, the one his father had mentioned in the voice note. Marcus noticed it. His eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the worn teddy bear. Then he looked back at Emma. "How long have you worked for me, Emma?" he asked. 2 years, sir," she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "And you never told me you had a son?" Emma shook her head. "I didn't want to cause any trouble. I just wanted to do my job well." The honesty in her words hit Marcus harder than he expected. Victoria let out a frustrated laugh. "Marcus, you can't seriously be considering." But before she could finish, little Liam lifted his head from his mother's shoulder. His face was red and wet with tears. In a small, shaky voice that somehow carried across the silent ballroom, he said, "Why is the pretty lady so angry at me? I just wanted to see Mama." The innocence in that sentence destroyed the room. Several guests visibly reacted. An older woman in a black dress pressed her hand to her chest. A man near the bar looked down at his drink, ashamed. Victoria's face turned red with anger and embarrassment. "Get them out," she ordered the nearest security guard. "Now." The guard hesitated, looking at Marcus for instruction. And that's when Marcus made his first powerful move of the night. He raised his hand, stopping the guard. "No one is going anywhere," he said, his voice calm, but carrying absolute authority. Victoria whipped her head toward him. "Marcus, what are you doing?" she whispered angrily. "You're embarrassing me in front of everyone." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked down at Emma and Liam. What happened next would be talked about in that mansion for years to come. He turned to the entire room and spoke in a clear, strong voice. "This party is over." Gasps erupted across the ballroom. Victoria's face went completely white. Emma looked up in shock, still holding her crying son. Marcus wasn't finished. He looked directly at Victoria and said the words that would change everything. "And Victoria, we need to talk. Alone." The music had completely stopped. The grand chandeliers still glowed beautifully above, but the atmosphere in the ballroom had shifted entirely. Hundreds of wealthy guests stood frozen, watching the drama unfold like it was a movie. Marcus had just announced that the party was over. Victoria stared at him in complete disbelief, her perfectly sculpted face now twisted with shock and rage. "What did you just say?" she hissed, stepping closer to him. "Marcus, have you lost your mind?" But Marcus wasn't looking at her anymore. His attention was fixed on Emma and little Liam. The small boy was still sniffling, clutching his teddy bear like it was his only protection in this huge, scary world. Marcus spoke gently to Emma, his voice low but kind. "Emma, may I see that phone?" Emma hesitated for a second, then handed it over with shaking hands. She was terrified. This job was all she had. If she lost it tonight, she didn't know how she would feed her son, or pay for her mother's treatment. Marcus took the phone and pressed play again. The man's voice returned, deeper this time, filled with regret and emotion that touched everyone listening. "Emma, if you're hearing this, it means I never came back. I'm so sorry. I was a coward. When you told me you were pregnant, I panicked. I ran. But every single day since then, I've regretted it. I left something for you both. Something that might help. There's a safety deposit box at Central Bank. The key is sewn inside Liam's teddy bear. The code is Liam's birthday. Inside that box is everything I have left. Savings, documents, and a letter for our son. I know it's not enough, but it's all I can give now. The voice cracked. Liam, if you ever hear this when you're older, I want you to know your daddy was weak, but he loved you. Be strong for your mom. She's the best person I've ever known. Take care of her. The voice note ended. Complete silence. Emma's knees nearly gave out. She covered her mouth with both hands as tears poured down her face. She had no idea any of this existed. All these years she had struggled alone, thinking her ex had left them with nothing. Little Liam looked up at his mother, confused. Mama, why are you crying? Was that Daddy? Emma couldn't speak. She just pulled her son closer and sobbed quietly. The guests were stunned. Some women were wiping their eyes. Even hardened businessmen looked moved. But Victoria was furious. She stepped forward, her voice sharp and cold. This is ridiculous. Some old voice note from a deadbeat father doesn't change anything. This woman still brought her child to our private party, without permission. She should be fired immediately. Marcus slowly turned to face her. His expression was calm, but his eyes were different now, colder than Victoria had ever seen. Fired? He repeated. Yes, Victoria snapped. This is unacceptable. We have standards, Marcus. I will not have our home turned into... Marcus cut her off. Our home, he said quietly. This is my home, Victoria. And right now, I'm ashamed of what just happened in it. A wave of whispers spread through the crowd. Victoria's face turned bright red. You're taking their side? Over me? Over your own fiancé? Marcus looked down at Liam, who was still watching everything with wide, tear-filled eyes. Then he looked back at Victoria. This little boy came looking for his mother. He was scared. And your first reaction was to humiliate him and his mother, in front of everyone. You called him not invited. You treated them like garbage. He paused, his voice growing heavier. I built my company on hard work and fairness. But tonight, I realized I've been blind in my own house. I never knew Emma had a sick mother. I never knew she was raising a child alone while working for me. And I never knew she was struggling this much. Marcus turned to Emma. Emma, I'm sorry. The words hit Emma like a wave. Fresh tears fell from her eyes. No one, especially not someone as powerful as Marcus Reed, had ever apologized to her like that. Victoria laughed bitterly. So this is it? One sad story and a voice note, and you're suddenly a saint? Don't be naive, Marcus. This is clearly a manipulation for money. But Marcus shook his head. No, Victoria. This is a wake-up call. He looked at the entire room and spoke with quiet authority. The party is over. Thank you all for coming. Please see yourselves out. Guests began slowly moving toward the exits, many still whispering about what they had witnessed. Victoria stood there, stunned and humiliated. As the last guests left, Marcus turned back to Emma and Liam. He crouched down again in front of the little boy. Hey Liam, he said softly. I'm really sorry about what happened tonight. No one should ever speak to you or your mom like that. Liam sniffled and looked at Marcus with those big innocent eyes. Are you angry at me too? The question broke Marcus's heart. No, buddy, he whispered. I'm not angry. I'm sad that we made you feel scared. Then Marcus did something no one expected. He gently took off his expensive suit jacket and wrapped it around Liam's small shoulders to keep him warm. Emma watched in complete disbelief. In that quiet, half-empty ballroom, surrounded by the remains of an extravagant party, something beautiful and deeply human was beginning to happen. But the night was far from over. What Marcus decided to do next would completely transform Emma and Liam's lives forever. The grand ballroom that had been filled with laughter and music just an hour ago now felt almost empty. Only a few staff members remained, quietly cleaning up. Crystal glasses and half-eaten plates of expensive food lay abandoned on the tables. Marcus Reed stood in the middle of it all, his jacket now wrapped around little Liam, who had finally stopped crying, and was watching the tall man with curious eyes. Victoria was still there, arms crossed, her face a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You're really doing this?" she said, her voice echoing in the large room. "You're choosing some maid and her fatherless child over me, over everything we've built?" Marcus looked at her for a long moment. His expression was calm, but there was a deep disappointment in his eyes. "I'm not choosing them over you, Victoria," he said quietly. "I'm choosing what's right. Something I should have been doing a long time ago." He turned to Emma, who was still kneeling on the floor, holding her son tightly. "Emma," Marcus said gently, "I want you to listen to me very carefully." Emma looked up, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She was still waiting for the moment when he would fire her. "I am not firing you," Marcus continued. "In fact, I'm deeply sorry for everything that happened tonight. No employee should ever have to choose between their child and their job. That ends now." Victoria let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "You've gone soft, Marcus. This is ridiculous." Marcus ignored her completely, and kept speaking to Emma. "Starting tomorrow, your salary will be tripled. You will also receive full medical coverage for both yourself and your mother, including all her cancer treatments. I've already instructed my assistant to handle it." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Marcus continued, his voice steady and sincere. "You will also be given a private apartment on the estate grounds, fully paid. No more worrying about rent. And Liam will be enrolled in the best preschool in the area, with transportation provided. All expenses covered by me." Tears began flowing down Emma's face again, but this time they were different. These were tears of overwhelming relief. Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Marcus looked down at Liam, who was now quietly playing with the buttons on the big jacket wrapped around him. "Because a 3-year-old boy taught me something tonight," he said. "He showed me how cruel I've allowed my world to become, how blind I've been to the people who actually keep this house running." He paused, then added softly, "And because no child should ever feel like they're not invited in a warm home." Victoria stepped forward, her face flushed with humiliation. "So that's it?" she snapped. "You're throwing away our engagement for this? For some guilt trip?" Marcus finally turned to face her fully. "Our engagement was built on appearances, Victoria. Not love, not real values. I see that clearly now. I think it's best if we end this tonight." The words hit Victoria like a slap. For a moment she stood there, stunned. Then her expression hardened. "You'll regret this, Marcus," she said coldly. "You're making a huge mistake." She picked up her purse, gave Emma one last hateful look, and walked out of the ballroom without another word, her heels clicking angrily against the marble floor. The silence that followed was heavy. Marcus let out a long breath and ran a hand through his hair. For the first time in many years, he looked human. He turned back to Emma and Liam. "I know this is a lot to take in right now," he said kindly. "You don't have to decide anything tonight, but I want you both to stay here in the guest wing. No more staff quarters. Liam needs to sleep comfortably." Emma was still crying quietly. "Mr. Reed, I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "No one has ever." "You don't need to thank me," Marcus replied. "Just promise me one thing." Emma nodded. "From now on," he said, "if you ever need anything at all, you come to me directly. No more hiding. No more struggling alone. Understood?" Emma nodded again, too emotional to speak. Marcus smiled softly at Liam, and gently ruffled the boy's hair. "And you, little guy? You were very brave tonight." Liam looked up at the tall man, and in a tiny voice asked, "Are you my new friend?" Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. He swallowed hard. "Yes, Liam," he said. "I'd like that very much." Later that night, after Emma and Liam had been taken to a beautiful guest suite with a soft bed and warm lights, Marcus sat alone in his study. The mansion was quiet now. He poured himself a glass of water and stared at the wall, thinking about everything that had happened. The voice note, Victoria's coldness, Emma's quiet strength, Liam's innocent tears. For the first time in years, Marcus Reed felt truly awake. He picked up his phone and sent a message to his assistant. Cancel all meetings tomorrow. I have something more important to do. The morning sun streamed through the large windows of the guest suite, casting a warm golden light across the room. Emma woke up to the most peaceful sight she had seen in years. Liam sleeping soundly beside her, wrapped in soft blankets, his teddy bear tucked under his arm. For the first time in a long time, she didn't wake up with anxiety in her chest. Downstairs in the main dining area, Marcus Reed was already waiting. He had cancelled every meeting. For the first time in years, the billionaire had cleared his entire schedule. When Emma and Liam came down, Marcus greeted them with a warm smile. Good morning, he said gently. I hope you both slept well. Liam rubbed his eyes and looked at Marcus shyly. Can I have pancakes? Marcus laughed, a real, genuine laugh. You can have all the pancakes you want, buddy. As they ate breakfast together, Marcus spoke to Emma with sincerity. I've thought a lot about last night, he said. What happened here was not just about one party. It was about me realizing how disconnected I had become from real life. From real people. He slid a folder across the table. Inside are all the documents. New contract, apartment keys, medical arrangements, and a college fund I've started for Liam. This isn't charity, Emma. You've earned every bit of this through your hard work and dignity. Emma opened the folder with trembling hands. When she saw the numbers and the support outlined, she broke down again. But this time, they were tears of pure gratitude and hope. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to say anything, Marcus replied. Just keep being the incredible mother you are. Over the following weeks, everything changed. Emma's mother began receiving the best possible cancer treatment. Liam started at a wonderful preschool, where he made friends and laughed every day. Emma was given a new role managing the estate's staff welfare, a position created just for her. Marcus changed too. He started showing up differently. He learned the names of every person who worked for him. He asked about their families. He made sure no one else ever had to hide their struggles, like Emma once did. As for Victoria, she moved on quickly, though the story of that night spread quietly through their social circles. Marcus never publicly spoke against her. He simply moved forward with a clearer heart. One quiet evening, months later, Marcus sat in the garden with Liam on his lap. The little boy was pointing at the stars, asking endless questions. Emma watched them from a distance, her heart full. Marcus looked over at her and smiled. In that moment, he understood something deep and beautiful. Sometimes the most important lessons don't come from boardrooms or success. They come from a small child, in a wrinkled shirt, holding a teddy bear, brave enough to walk into a world that tried to push him away. We spend so much of our lives building walls of wealth, status, and perfection. But then a child walks in, with nothing but love and honesty, and those walls come crumbling down. The real question is, when was the last time you truly saw the person in front of you? Not their clothes, not their position, but their heart. If this story touched you, drop a comment and tell me, what would you have done if you were in Marcus's place? Thank you for watching until the end. Stories like this remind us why we're all human. See you in the next one.